She guided him toward a towering, overgrown archway that led outside, where the true splendor of Ithea was just a glimpse. As they stepped through, the air was immediately filled with the scent of early blooming night vines, their luminescent petals casting a glow even in the fading daylight. The western diplomatic district sprawled before them, gleaming spires intertwined with lush, cascading greenery, white walkways suspended between trees, and streams of crystal-clear water winding through the streets. A metropolis, nestled in and mimicked on the forests of the northern continent of Ithea, alive and breathing as they were. Iz watched his reaction with nervous excitement. "This is our capital, Vailith," she explained. "The heart of Athean civilization. The planning alone took our entire cast of scholars. No resource was taken without being replenished, but still, nothing was spared." She hesitated, then added carefully, "I imagine it must seem very different from the cities of Earth. From what I have seen in your records, what does he think of our lack of walls? Our open markets, our cultural works that are touted at each corner so proudly? The lack of pollution anywhere?" But she held her tongue for now, four ears quietly fluttering, allowing him to absorb the sight of it all before pressing further. His eyes took it in with quiet fascination. This must be the first thing that she found so peculiar about humans. They all seemed so quiet. "It must have taken decades to complete," he commented, with an almost inaudible air of wonder, staring up and down at the spiraling structures of the towers of the First Accord. "I have never seen something quite like this." Iz's ears flicked in amusement, a soft melodic hum escaping her as she followed his gaze upward. "Decades?" she echoed, her voice laced with a quiet pride. "Oh, no, centuries. Some of these spires have stood for over 1,000 years, maintained and refined with each generation." She gestured towards a particularly grand structure, though that would be hard to pin down in Vailith, with its surface shimmering an iridescent sheen as if woven from liquid pearl. "That one next to them, the luminous spire, was first erected during the age of First Bloom. It was designed to catch the light of our twin suns at dawn and dusk, scattering it across the city like a blessing." Her tail gave a gentle sway as she spoke. "We do not believe in haste when it comes to creation. Every detail is considered. Every curve, every material chosen to honor the balance of form and function. Speaking of which, there is a garden not far from here. I believe you might like it." His gaze followed the skyline, eyes barely touching the ground as she adjusted their path. The interior gradually faded, white corridors replaced by an open space rich with the scent of Vailith, soothing and herbal like the Ithean south. The garden connected harmoniously, mathematically precise. Iz herself designed a fern here, in a manner that its leaves perfectly approximated pi's first 50 digits, in what humans called a Fourier series. Before she could comment on it, however, the human had already conquered the bench, admiring a genetically engineered waste bucket. Iz almost screamed when he bared his teeth, but quickly composed herself, clinging onto the tablet. "It was a yawn, Iz." "Excuse me. It has been quite a journey," he said, in an apologetic tone. He was tired. She had been drowning him in conversation, and all this time he did not even have the opportunity to sit down. Iz had read thousands of pages of his culture's work, and didn't once think he'd need to sit down. "I'm sorry, of course, yes. No harm in it, is there?" A rhetorical question. Iz learned about those. A question not meant to be answered. The sheer paradox of it captivated Iz's imagination and pen. Her cohort mate grew tired of it fairly quickly. But what did she know? She set the slim device between them and joined him on the cushion. The human's eyes were still busy with the garden scenery. "Regarding my question, this garden, or our spires, does such patience exist among humans?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. Or do your people prefer to build swiftly? The question was diplomatic, but beneath it lay a deeper curiosity. The question seemed to pull the human back to the present. His back and strong, decorated fabric straightening once more. "Before I answer, what is your natural lifespan?" he asked, running his paw, no, his hand, across the surface of the bench. Izzy's ears stiffened slightly at the question, her tail going still. A flicker of hesitation passed through her before she answered. Measured, precise, recalculated to human years in her head. "The average Athean lives between 300 to 350 of your Earth years," she said, her voice as steady as possible, "though some of our scholars and spiritual leaders have reached around 400 cycles." "And yours?" she asked softly, though she already knew the answer. The reports had been very clear. Humans burned bright and fast. Like fire. Like predators on the hunt, who had no time to waste. She watched his fingers trace the outline of the alloy's frame. The contrast was there. His blunt, grasping digits against the smooth organic alloy of Athean craftsmanship. "It is different. Our natural lifespan reaches 90 of our years. More for some, but for many, less. Life to us must be like a fleeting dream to you." He seemed to almost shrink at this fact, gaze cast down over the railing at the edge of the garden, overlooking the unhurried streets below. Izzy's breath caught in her throat, her ears lowering slightly as she absorbed his words. The thought was unsettling. To live so briefly, to rush through existence like a spark in the dark. How could any species thrive under such pressure? Her full ears tilted forward, betraying her curiosity despite her diplomatic poise. She hesitated before speaking, choosing her words with care. "To us, such brevity is difficult to comprehend," she admitted, her voice low. "We take centuries to perfect a single art, to nurture a bond, to understand one another. But you..." Her gaze flickered to him, studying the way the twin suns caught in his eyes, metal on his fabric, colourful like the garden. "You must learn, create and live in the span of a single Athean adolescence. I myself am barely just 85. A quiet tension coiled in her chest. Was that why humans were so hungry? So relentless? Why they eat other beings? Their development had been grand, comparable to Athea already, in a dizzyingly short amount of time. Though their history seemed with many holes and hiccups during that progress. If she had only decades to her life, what would she chase with such fervour? Would it not make sense to take more for herself, living or not? "Does it frighten you?" she asked suddenly, the question slipping out before she could stop it, "knowing how much less time you have than others?" She suddenly chastised herself. This was a diplomatic cultural exchange, not a meditation class. He pondered the question for a moment. "It does," he said. The soft tinkling of the lichen played on Izzy's ears. Below, the traffic murmured upwards like a gentle gust of wind. "But my fear changes nothing." Izzy's ears pressed back against her skull, her chest tightening at the raw honesty in his voice. For a moment, she forgot to be diplomatic, forgot to analyze, to assess. Instead, she felt. "That is remarkable," she murmured, "to carry such weight and still move forward." Her tail curled around her thigh, a nervous tick of hers. "We Athenians, we have the luxury of time. We can afford patience, deliberation, but you..." She trailed off, her blue eyes searching his face. "You must build, love, strive, live, knowing how swiftly it will all be taken from you." A strange warmth bloomed in her chest, something between admiration and sorrow. She had spent so long fearing what humanity's reckless, downright predatory nature might mean for the galaxy, but now, faced with the quiet courage of this fleeting being, she wondered if she had misunderstood them entirely. Their pale moon, the blue mother, peered through the tall clouds above, as another gondola headed to the heavens above, raking upwards on thin wire. Her ears lifted slightly, a tentative softness in her gaze. Perhaps that is why your people reached the stars so quickly. You had to. That concerns you, does it not? That we had to run before we could walk? Those direct words pierced between Iz's defences. It took her effort to not tremble at the observant question. Though it went beyond that. She was not concerned. She was terrified. They all were. The galactic community, frail as it was, had not seen anything like this. Carnivory. A species making leap after leap without slowing down. No, accelerating as they went. That leapt from their moon to their solar system and beyond, before the Athean elders decided on their name. What drove these beings? The concept of such drive, such inexhaustible fervour, was alien to her in every sense. Athean philosophies spoke of cycles, of gradual growth, of the universe's infinite patience. But this seemed like fire. This was the desperate, clawing thought that time was not a river to wade through, but a wildfire to outrun, before it choked you and consumed you alive. Running before walking, she repeated in her head. The Athean found herself on her legs, stepping close to the railing without thinking, her voice hushed against the rising air. You are right, she admitted. To us, it is terrifying. To all of us, all members of the First Accord. Her tail curled tight against her back. And yet... Her gaze flickered over his face, tracing the lines of his stoic expression. I think there is a kind of beauty in your struggle, isn't there? To know your limits so intimately, to rage against them even as you test them. For the first time, she envied humans. Their urgency, their hunger. It was scary, yes, but also vibrant. Her gaze was drawn to the main avenue again, where another procession was moving past. Another grand poet was parading his works, evidently inspired by the grand first contact ceremony between their two races. It was moving slower than the clouds above, taking its own pace as Athean after Athean spoke to recite lines from the great work, joining and leaving the spoken word in a grand, alive chorus. If circumstances had been different, if her application as attaché had been rejected, she would have gladly been part of that beautiful thing. But now it seemed almost trivial to her. She wondered how he viewed it. Would he even understand? A treacherous thought burned in her head. Perhaps he was right not to. Perhaps humanity was alive in a way her people had forgotten long ago. Tell me your history. Why? The request was impulsive, undiplomatic, but she no longer cared. She needed to understand. Why this urgency? That burns even against one another, against your own kin. Did it have to be this way? On Athea, we have solved every problem, every disagreement, with dialogue, thought, and time. She cut herself off, realizing her sheer naivety. Is knew this species did not have this luxury, had not the lush opulence provided by good Athea, did not have the calm ecological niches for them to rise with gradually, organically, in a rewarding harmony. Never could afford to trade good enough for perfect. Iz cursed herself silently, for is fluttering in embarrassment. Though the human did not laugh at her, something she learned humans often subjected another to. I suppose that ambition was ingrained into us from our early years. Lowly mammals, scrapping to survive. We took grand steps, some forwards, many backwards. He joined her on the railing. Iz's claws flexed against the alloy as she absorbed his words. Ambition, she repeated softly. We have no true equivalent in our language. The closest term translates to the reaching of roots toward water. Her ears flicked downward, a shadow passing over her expression. "But yours is not so patient, is it? Yours would be a clawing." The term sat heavy in her mind, so human in its implications. A species that clawed its way up from nothing, that refused to accept its place in the natural order. Athenians were practically groomed to be their planet's rulers. Not so with humanity, or so the xenohistorians surmised. Humanity's rise from cradle to the stars was a painful affair. Some even refer to it as a conquest, though Iz revolted at the term. She exhaled slowly. "You spoke of it all so casually," she murmured. "What you did to just survive. For us, such thinking is—" She hesitated, searching for the right word. "Unthinkable. We evolved in abundance, in harmony." A strange tension coiled in her chest. "We did not," he commented neutrally, the way only a human could have. Mother Earth was not all kind to us, and for many of our ancestors that old night was cold and dark. Cold and dark. The words seemed in Iz's chest like a weight. She had read the reports, of course, the reconstructions of Earth's brutal ecosystems, the simulations of early human survival. But hearing it from him, so starkly, so matter-of-factly, it made something in her gut twist. She could not bear that thought, to see her own fellow being cease to be, randomly, but with terrifying certainty. From the uncaring cold, or worse, from another Athenian. "We knew your world was harsher than ours," she admitted, her voice a whisper. "But to hear you speak of it—" She cut herself off. How could she even articulate the horror, the wrongness of it? Athea had never known true scarcity, true predation. She dropped the thought, but the human continued it. "Our ancestors were wise, however. They saw the dark and created fire," said the human. "They had to make fire, had to learn to run first." Her tale was restless. She had seen the reconstructed records of human history, the way their civilizations flickered and flared, some burning out too soon, others spreading like wildfire. It was nothing like the slow, steady glow of Athenian progress. Her ears trembled nervously as she struggled to reconcile this philosophy with everything she knew. "So, you ran," she echoed, her voice hollow, "while we walked." The realization set in. All this time, her people had assumed humanity's rapid advancement was a sign of recklessness or danger, another attribute of a carnivorous species. But what if it was simply necessity? What if they had no other choice? She eyed the luminous spire that stood for 1,000 years, having been perfected by each generation. And then she thought of human cities, built in decades, rebuilt in years, reinvented between Athenian breaths. "We had never needed that fire the way you did," she admitted softly. "Perhaps if things had been as hard for our ancestors, we would have been far across the universe by now." The words tasted bitter, heretical. To imply that Athenian peace was anything less than perfection was unthinkable, and yet here she was, thinking it. "But we are both here, with or without it," he said, features settling in what Iz knew to be a relaxed expression. She exhaled softly. "Yes," she murmured, quieter now, less guarded. "We are." For a moment, she allowed herself to simply look at him, not as a predator, not as a potential threat, but as a person. A being who had fought a different kind of battle than her people ever had. Body shaped for labor, for running in the most literal sense, for struggle and strife, for tracking and hunting in the heat of savannah or the biting frost. And yet here they both stood, from worlds light years apart, beneath the same blue sky. She tried to measure her tone. "Did you believe our records? The pictures of Athea? Our history? Or did they seem too good to be true to you?" We did believe you, but me, personally, I still wanted to set foot on another planet and see it with my own eyes. To do what my ancestors could only dream of. Grasp the stars, he said, appendage tentatively raised to the gently blinking twin suns above, tiny shadows dancing on his face. Her chest tightened. She never yearned for them the way he described. To them, the stars were simply there. A part of Athea's harmony, not a challenge to be met. But the way he spoke, with such quiet reverence, such awe, it made something in her stir. A feeling she couldn't name. Was he not angry? The thought swirled in her head, to see what they had built without ever needing to take it. Grasping for the lights above with stubby digits, reaching it through struggle, then meeting those who never reached, who never struggled. But now, seeing themselves here on this other world, had they not achieved enough? A part of her wanted to tell him directly that they did not have to run anymore. But another part of her knew that he would not understand, and that must have been at the center of Iz's fear. Part of her recoiled at the idea. Such waste, such chaos. But another part, small and traitorous, again thrilled at it. To be cold and hungry, having nothing, but wanting everything? The sheer audacity of a species that looked at the stars, reached out their hand and said, "Mine." We have records, ancient poems, carvings, of when we first reached the stars, she said softly. But for us it was inevitable, a natural progression. She hesitated. But I see now that, for you, it was a victory. The word felt heavy, significant. Wasn't it? He nodded, seemingly comforted at her words. It was a hard-fought victory. Against nature, against ourselves. It did not come easy to us. The implication hung in the air. For you, it was easy. For us, it was conquest. It was war. That peculiar term that terrified is. Her ears flattened, her tail curling tight against her back as if to shield herself from the very concept. She had studied it, of course. The reports, the simulations, the endless debates among Athean scholars about how a species could turn on itself with such violence, on such a scale, over and over again, if it even was possible. Doubts that were quickly washed away once first contact was established, and the humans sent all their records willingly, as if that had not been the most profane document Iz had ever seen with her long blue eyes. That fact, she quivered, the idea that your people could, that you did. She cut herself off, tail flexing against the railing. We have no equivalent, no framework to even understand it, and yet you can speak of it as if it were just another step, another tool, as if war was your nature. His gravelly voice was an odd tone now, almost remorseful. It is, in a way. We were born in war. Peace was something we had to learn. Iz went rigid, her fur bristling along her spine. Born in war. The phrase echoed in her skull, dark and primal. Her ears flattened against her skull. You invented peace? The words tasted strange on her tongue. To her, peace was like air, ever-present, unquestioned. The thought of it being a construct, something fragile and hard-won. We invited you here, she says slowly, because we feared what you might do if left unchecked. Her blue eyes locked onto his, and his were as a still sea, every word suddenly sinking beneath. But now I wonder if we should have feared what you might teach us instead. The emission hummed between them, charged. For the first time since his arrival, Iz was aware of the chasm between their cultures. The utter incomprehensibility of one side to the other. How not just their world, but her way of living was at risk. What if those ideas spread here too, just like on his Earth? Would it not burn Athean culture to ash? We figured as much, which is why we waited for you to invite us, rather than the other way around, he said. his tone carefully measured. He did not want to judge. But he was tense, she thought. Tell me, when your people saw into the dark, what did you think you would find? What was it you see? She followed his gaze upwards to the stars, her lower ears twitching as she considered the question. What were the stars? A constant, gentle presence. The backdrop of a beautiful, weaving still life that included Athea. When we look, she began softly, we see harmony, patterns, the same cycles that govern our world, reflected in the heavens. She relaxed at the thought. Colour and vibrancy, life, and with each member of the first accord, that feeling only intensified. Forgive me, but silent? I do not understand. The human stiffened, almost painfully. When we peeled our eyes skywards, it did not look this way to us. Iz could not stop herself. You feared it, didn't you? I want to say that we respected it, but you are probably right. A pause, then, quieter, she complimented his thought. You saw them cold and dark, just like your home. Is that why you build your warships? She carefully asked. Iz realized that this was veering dangerously into topics the human might object to talk about, but something made her ask it anyway. It was a concept so disturbing, so paradoxical to her. It was an oxymoron. Two opposites, combined. Spaceflight and progress together with barbarity and predation. The epitome of both peace and war. You embraced us, welcomed us, and you accepted us, and for that humanity is forever grateful. His words become one with the murmur of Velith, the gentle swaying of the golden lichen. But before first contact, it was for us as it was for our ancestors. We were alone, and the stars were cold and silent. Have you ever considered why? Her claws flexed and she whispered, But to build those things. How can I explain? There is an old saying. The human seemed amused, a seemingly old memory flooding to him. Speak softly, but carry a big stick. Her ears shot upright, her tail puffing out in alarm before she could stop it. A big stick? The euphemism was almost playful, but the meaning beneath it was anything but. She had seen the reports and images. Humanity's warships, blocky, stretched steel, rife with implements their scholars were still trying to identify. Rather undignified compared to the carefully preened Athean vessels, but hard, enduring, and teeming. Their expansion had already surpassed the limits of the First Accord's charts, and still they ventured on without pause, like stones sinking into deep black waters. Their automated deterrence strategies, machined intelligence, utterly taboo on Athea, whose purpose was only to preserve the human defensive lines, in cold, unfeeling calculus. To her people, such things were monstrous, unthinkable. Then, all at once, it clicked. Humanity hadn't reached the stars. They had conquered them, just as their world. From their caves, to continents, to the cosmos, they never stopped. Not just out of curiosity, but defiance, to keep that fire burning. The thought was equal parts awe-inspiring and terrifying. Did your people ever plan for us? The question was rife with danger. Iz knew as much, but she was more scared of the answer. Before first contact, before all ceremonies, before all this, did you prepare for the possibility that we might be a threat? He pressed his lips together, in thought for a moment. But you were kind to us, the human said simply. Iz's breath caught in her throat as his words dug their way in, and the human beside her suddenly did not seem small at all. The implication was clear. Humanity's grace was not inherent, but chosen. A deliberate restraint that could be withdrawn. The human was not a predator, but a soldier. A soldier in a war that had lasted millennia before her ancestors even dreamed of tools. A soldier that had chosen peace. Not because he couldn't do otherwise, but because he hadn't needed to. A terrible understanding dawned in her. Of course they had built their warships, their orbital platforms. They hadn't known the galaxy was filled with herbivores, with pacifists. Her breath came shallow now, her pulse racing. "You did wargame us," she breathed, horrified. Wargame. Another terrible human oxymoron. "You were running wargames before you even knew what we were. You had strategies, contingencies." The thought was sickening. The stars above seemed suddenly colder, sharper. No longer just points of light, but targets. How many of them had humans already reached? How many more would they claim? She swallowed hard. "You are saying your kindness now, your peace, is a gift, not a nature. That your people could have come to us with fire and teeth, but instead, you came with open hands." The realization was at once humbling and horrifying. All this time, the Athenians had assumed their peaceful ways made them superior. But now she wondered if they were simply lucky that humanity had decided to play by rules, older than their civilization. The human did not say anything, still deliberating. The golden lichen softly chimed, and when it paused, Iz could only watch as the human slowly picked up her tablet and expertly navigated her device with stubby fingers. He paused the tablet's recording with a swipe of his fingers. You can read Athenian?" "I had plenty of time to learn during my journey, but please, listen carefully. You should know that it goes deeper." He again kept his voice steady, diplomatic, but a turbulent undercurrent remained. Iz listened with bated breath. "After Unification Day, our scientists and weapon engineers never stopped working. There is an installation within our inner asteroid belt. It is a weapon, the greatest humanity has ever built. Virtually undetectable, it harvests asteroids and refines them into ultra-dense munitions. It can launch them at a considerable fraction of the speed of light. A kinetic auxiliary that can reach anywhere." Iz's body went deathly still. Her ears pinned back so sharply it hurt, her fur standing on end as if charged with static. The glittering of the lichen seemed obscene in the silence. Though physics was not her strong suit, the calculations unfolded in her Athenian mind with horrifying ease and clarity. Kinetic impulse of that relativistic scale could reduce cities to craters in the blink of an eye, render entire biospheres uninhabitable. No, crack entire worlds in two. Athea had no defenses, not even a plan. When she finally spoke, her voice didn't sound like her own. It was too raw, too small. You built a doomsday device while pretending at diplomacy?" Her breath came in shallow gasps. "Was this always your plan? To study us, learn our weaknesses, and then—" She cut herself off, trembling. The beautiful spires around them suddenly felt like targets. The open streets like kill zones. Every Athenian going about their day in blissful ignorance, playing music in the gardens, debating philosophy in the shade of thousand-year-old towers, never suspecting that their new allies had already aimed at them from the start. "Why tell me this?" she demanded, voice cracking. "Is this a threat? A warning?" The words tasted like bile. All her careful diplomacy, her attempts at understanding, had they ever mattered at all? "No, Iz, you misunderstand. We did not build this weapon with you in mind," he said, words heavy, dragged out. "Not for us." The human retrieved his own device, akin to a tablet, but bulkier and in black. An Athenian would have refused to even gaze their eyes upon such a thing, but Iz was stunned and drank it in. "Watch." The black material came to life with a seemingly ancient recording. Humans were out and about, and their singular sun shone above white sand, not unlike the sands Is remembered from their southern coast. The recording panned up and revealed their large cratered moon, which Is had grown fond of from humanity's depictions. All greater was her horror, then, when a dash of white light struck its side, pieces visible in the blue sky for just a blink, and the feed cut to black. Is stared at her own reflections in stunned silence. The screen turned on again, showing their blue marble, a dash of red, like a gaping wound, cut across its surface. Horrible pictures kept flooding the space, cities and bodies consumed by flame, and Is had to look away to not throw up. "Our moon saved us that day," he said, scratching his face fur. "Their timing was off by a few short hours. Mere femtoranians with a cosmic scope, I'd imagine. Yet tens of millions died. Many more when the fragments rained down."
What was it? An asteroid or...
"A missile."
Are you sure? Not a wayward comet or...
The question died halfway out of her mouth. Is was unable to explain away what she saw. It had been so fast, she could count each frame in her head before the light sprang from moon to their planet. A mere second, if at all. Too many heavy elements, definitely artificial, launched with purpose. It was what we would call a kill missile.
But who? What kind of monstrous mind would use this weaponry? Without reason, without even reaching out to...
Is shuddered, struggling to grasp it all. The human spoke again. "So, yes, to us the stars were not something that seemed welcoming. The night was dark." Is could see it now. Ithia in flames, light from the heavens, burning bright for an instant, then forever extinguished, swallowed by the stars. The human's voice kept her anchored. "But from our ancestors we had learned. We knew what to do."
"And you made your fire."
Is completed his thought.
You think they will come back? Finish the job?" she whispered. "Some merciless genocider amongst the dark? That erased world after world, keeping the universe silent?"
Her tail caught tight around her leg, her entire body trembling.
"And, after realizing this, instead of hiding or praying, your first instinct was to build a gun pointed at the dark?"
The human nodded. A hysterical laugh bubbled up in her throat. All this time the Athenians had pitied humans for their short, violent lives. She shuddered.
What if they did come back?
The galaxy suddenly felt vast and hungry in ways her civilization had never dared imagine. And this brief, brutal creature beside her, had it deciphered the universe all along? Is felt sick and held onto the railing for dear life.
For humanity, it had never been about the Athenians at all.
Her heart stopped as another terrible thought struck her.
"That weapon you built," she whispered. It is for everyone that would threaten you. Like your ships, your machines, and had we," she bit her blue tongue, "been hostile, that would have included us."
It hung between them, unspoken. Is finally understood the human saying. Speak softly, but carry a big stick. All their diplomacy, their cultural exchange, it was just the preferred option. Not the only one. Never the only one. All this time her people had feared what humanity was, but they had never stopped to consider what it was that humanity feared.
"We're children," she breathed, staring at her shaking paws. "Playing in a garden we never fathomed might be surrounded by bones."
The emission tasted like ash.
All their art, their philosophy, their peace, how much of it was just luck? that some great evil had its back turned on them for a cosmic minute. You had it all planned, hadn't you? How to erase our population centers, how to decipher our communications, how to coordinate. Interstellar war beyond what we could comprehend. Against all members of the First Accord. You thought we were that threat at first, didn't you?
His gaze was tired, and his voice was with a tone that Iz thought resembled remorse. Iz, by now you know the answer, don't you? We have been drilling endlessly for such an event. Not just a rod in the dark, a true first contact. Bunkers, evacuation plans, early warning satellites, scattered throughout systems. All were at the ready. The rods were in their silos. We always expected to be struck first, so we waited for your move. And waited. Until you contacted us in our own language. And you had made songs for us. We had not expected this. We hadn't even planned for it. Frankly, we did not know what to do. Her people had spent centuries observing Earth, debating the ethics of contact, carefully crafting their approach over decades. All that time, humanity had been hunkered down, fingers and triggers, staring at the stars like sentries waiting for an ambush. While her people had spent millennia composing symphonies to the dark above, they had been preparing to fight it, or at least take it down with them.
You thought first contact would be gunfire, she choked out, nodding, her ears trembling. Of course, since you think the natural state of the universe is war?
Her claws scraped, leaving faint marks against the alloy. It sure seems that way to us. Iz knew not what to answer.
And when we came speaking of peace, you must have thought it was a trick of those who had hurt you.
She looked up at the human, who was scanning the procession down below with curious eyes.
We thought we were civilizing you, she admitted.
He met her gaze, sympathetic. Sorry to say, but we could tell. A chuckle rang from his throat. How could he still be so calm? Her doubts were so clear now. Their peaceful utopia, had it really been a fluke? A temporary bubble in a cosmos that rewarded that exact human blend of paranoia, pragmatic violence, and intellect?
You lived like that, waiting to be struck again, preparing to burn the sky in response?
The concept was unthinkable. No Athean could function under such existential dread. They'd wither from the stress alone. Yet here the human stood, not just functioning, but thriving, building, exploring. Even now, this one spoke with grim clarity, rather than madness. The calculations raced in Iz's mind, and the severity of it all took hold. The wider galaxy was silent, suspiciously so. The thought was revolting, but what if someone really was perpetuating that silence with those unthinkable terror weapons? Her people and the First Accord had called the silence of the cosmos serenity. Humans saw the same and called it a warning, then a danger. And yet, even with tireless searching, there could always be a world left unturned, harbouring what nightmares dwell in human minds. Iz understood then. For their own survival, humanity couldn't stop burning. The twin suns cast their two shadows, long and trembling, across the ground.
Do you understand what you're telling me? She whispered. That your entire species has been holding its breath, waiting for the galaxy to show its teeth once more?
Her tail lashed violently.
And instead of that, you got us.
It is funny how the universe works sometimes, isn't it? The human gave, smiling wearily. But we are relieved that we discovered you, instead of the others. The casual way he acknowledged that what dared called itself an intelligence made her stomachs churn. The greatest horror the Athean mind could conceive had been a slightly aggressive trade negotiation, up until an hour ago. She rose slowly on unsteady legs. Her fur still partially bristled.
"You are relieved," she repeated.
"I am. We all were." The garden was quiet for a moment.
"We have no defenses," she admitted. "No plans. No contingencies. If the galaxy is as dangerous as you fear, if it came for us, we would not survive."
The emission tasted bitter.
"But you would. Your big stick would save you."
Humanity's history taught us the fine difference between peaceful and harmless. The human worded carefully, measured, to not cause much offense in his. At least, that was how it seemed to her. It stung anyway.
"You're saying the my people are the latter?"
The realization felt like frost.
"That we built this harmless paradise because we never had to fight for it? Because nothing tried to take it from us?"
Iz's ears drooped. Peaceful, not harmless. The distinction cut deeper than any claw should. Your people never needed to learn. He tried to put her at ease.
"And perhaps that has doomed us,"
Iz mused. She simply stared at Valif's shimmering spires. So pristine, so fragile. They lasted 1,000 years because no one had ever tested them. No predators in the dark night. No rods from gods, just peace. Taken for granted. A humorless laugh escaped her.
"And now here you are," she murmured, "holding our innocence at gunpoint just by existing. You don't even have to do anything. The moment I grasped what you were, saw what you showed me, it seemed like the galaxy stopped being the one I knew." "We need to talk to your leaders," she said abruptly, straightening her posture with visible effort. "Properly. No more diplomatic dances. Because if the universe is as dark as you believe, we need this fire of yours more than ever."
For the first time since his arrival, Iz didn't look nervous around the human. She looked afraid of everything else. The human straightened his back, and the metal on his chest reflected golden in the suns. "I agree. Together, our chances are greater. We would be honored to teach you." Iz's tail uncoiled from around her leg as she studied the human's face for any hint of deception. Finding none, she felt a tinge of warmth.
"Honored,"
she repeated softly, her voice trembling with cautious wonder.
"After everything you've just told me, after knowing what we are, soft, slow, unprepared, you would still call it an honor, not a drag?"
A strange emotion flickered in her. Not fear, not awe, something closer to hope. Humanity had clawed its way to the stars with blooded hands, yes, but they were offering to extend those same hands to lift her people up, not strike them down. She reached out hesitantly, her clawed paws against the railing near his hand. Not touching, but close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his skin.
"Then teach us," she whispered, "how to face this dark."
"We will," the human agreed, with no second guessing. "And once our people are ready." The human's face now was steeled with a steadfastness that would have shuddered at before, but made her chest tighten with resolve now. "We will find whoever cast that rod. If it takes centuries, if it takes millennia, but we will find them. And perhaps then, both of us can teach them the distinction between peaceful and harmless." Iz found herself gripped by the image and clutched that comfort as her gaze drifted to the stars. No longer just beautiful, but watchful, cold and dark. In truth, she was terrified at their newly made meaning. But beside her, the human stood, unmoved by all this, surely and steadily planning in his mind.